Okay, so this is a lesson on basic EQing in Studio One. I will point out this is not my area of expertise. However, I can teach you the basic concepts of making a song sound that bit nicer through EQ and using things called presets for EQing your track. So here we have our song that we've been working on. We've cleaned it up a little bit by just panning the instruments out so they're not all on top of each other in the center of our mix. So you can see we've got our electric guitar to the right and left there, and we've panned out some other things as well. We've kept our lead vocals in the center just to make it all a bit clearer. I've also cut out some of the unnecessary audio in microphones, or spill is what we call it in our microphones, that we don't really need. So I've got rid of some of that. A little bit more work to be done, but that's okay. So I'm going to start now with our drum kit, EQing our drum kit. Just going to get rid of my mixer there for a moment. And nice to have all the drum kit together. I've still got the snare at the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that down. And then I'm going to order my, just for ease, you might call this fussy, but I'm going to order my drum kit so that I've got the really low stuff at the bottom and the high stuff at the top there. So I've got my kick drum, my floor tom, the next biggest one up, the rack tom, next biggest tom, the snare with its sort of higher snappy sort of sound, and the rattle from the snare wires, and my drum overheads, which are picking up everything, but they're picking up largely the cymbals as well. Now we can go through and start EQing these. So I'll start with the bass drum here. You can see the waveform there, you can see it kicking in, so to speak, excuse the pun. And I can either double click here or click on my mix button down in the corner to bring up my mixer. Now what we need to do, well, firstly we'll work out where the kick drum is on here. Here it is here. If you're ever unsure, you can see how that's changing the highlighted channel down the bottom. Back to my kick, so I know that that's my kick. And I'm going to use a thing called inserts. So inserts just allow me to insert an effect or some sort of manipulation of the sound onto that track. At the moment, none of our tracks have any inserts, all right? But that's where our EQs are going to go. So to get an EQ there, I need to just hit the plus button there, plus, and then I'm looking for this one called Pro EQ. And then this equalizer will pop up on your screen. So an equalizer is basically a way of manipulating or increasing or getting rid of different frequencies in your sound. So you imagine a bass drum is generally quite a low sound. So we're going to have lots in here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. And so that'll come through over here when we hit play. So I'm just going to select a small portion of my song. I'm going to right click on that and loop that section so it just goes over and over. Oh, and then I'll solo that track out. So that's just our bass drum mic. Okay, so you would have seen that a lot of our sound was coming up the low end. So we're just going to EQ using some presets. So if I click this little drop down menu and then click drums, it can set up for me different EQs depending on what type of bass drum we want. You can see this one has some pretty interesting shapes and things going on. You don't have to understand all this, you just need to know which ones you like. And also consider with microphones, a lot of the time what you're looking for is something that sounds natural. Like if it sounds odd or out of place, it probably is. We go down here. See, this one here's got a lot of highs in it. So being a microphone, you're probably going to pick up some of the cymbals and things in that one as well. Let's have a listen. We can bring this down if we want. Oops. Actually, we might just leave it. Just while it's playing, have a listen to the different EQs. hear how different that is. Might go for this one. I'm just going to pull some of the top out of it though. I don't want so many cymbals in there. Pretty happy with that. Alright, so we've EQ'd our kick drum. Now let's go to the floor tom. Now the floor tom only plays a little bit. Oh, let's go down the end here. I can see it plays in through here. So let's hear the floor tom. Back to Pro EQ, presets, drums, floor tom. I'm going to pull some of the highs out again. Alright, happy with that. Move on to the next one. Rack tom. Again, there's a lot of spill from the cymbals in that. I'll pull that out. Oh, hang on. I'll do presets again. Let's go for a rack tom. Again with the highs. Just pull them out a bit. Pretty happy with that. Now, you should know, so one of the reasons I cut these out as well, you're not going to hear much across this range. The bass drum probably sits about here as well. So I'm sort of stopping the sound from my tom going over the sound from my kick a little bit. So then they have their own sort of space in the mix and they're nice and clear instead of being a mess of sound. So that's one of the reasons I'm sort of taking these in from the edge. We'll pick up plenty of cymbals from the overheads as well. So I just pull that in a little bit. Let's hear the snare. That's not a great sound for a snare. Let's check out our presets. Snare drum, SD, snare drum. Oh, that's better. Straight away, that's much clearer. I actually quite like that first one. Let's try the others. It's a bit toppy. Here at the top end there. That sounds pretty natural. Pretty happy with that. Now our overheads, so this is for our cymbals. Pro EQ, presets, drums, overheads. There's only 3. I don't like that one, it's a bit thin. That sounds better. Go for that one. Then we can hear our whole drum kit together. And now, as I listen to this, I'm going to do some mixing here. And I'm going to adjust the levels according to which instruments I want to sort of stick out and which ones want to sit back a bit more. Pretty happy with that. We can set that against the track.
Oh, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. We're just living.
Alright, that's sounding much better. Much happier with that now. Alright, let's keep going up. So our bass guitar. From memory, the bass guitar was the track I liked the least in terms of its sound. Let's have a look at some EQs for that. Instruments this time. Got quite a few for the bass. just was playing around with that one a bit. I feel like that recording's probably the weakest track of them all. So feel free to play around with these. One thing you can do as well, you can sort of spike a particular frequency and hear what's in that frequency. I'll show you that now. I'm just going to leave it there. All right. Lead vocals. All right. This is a pretty important one. We want to have our lead vocals right. Let's have a look at the presets for that. Where is she singing?
In the city.
She is perfect.
Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Oh, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard.
Probably like that
it's
one the most.
hard.
The only issue is with this vocals, it sounded pretty warm to start with and fuzzy. I'll turn that off.
Oh, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
Now with it on.
We're just living in the city.
So with the EQ on there, you can hear it's much clearer, and you hear some of the top ends being just poked up a little bit over here. So what I kind of want to take out is a bit of the microphone wind noise, the sort of hiss sort of noise. So I'm going to have a crack at taking some of that out.
Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
Hear all that?
Oh, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. We're just living in the city.
There's a lot there. See, that's...
Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
That line there. It's right
oh,
across.
it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
We'll just leave it there. Let's hear that against our other instruments now, and we'll just set our levels.
Oh, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city.
Pretty happy with that. All right, backup vocals. Pro EQ. We'll just set our loop over where he's actually singing. There we go.
Just living in the city.
Here he is. This is our male. What have I done here? I've done the wrong one. That's how easy it is. Vocals, male.
Living in the city, in the city. 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 Living in the city, in the city.
Right, that'll do. Female vocals, same thing.
Living in the city, in the city. Living in the city, in the city. Living in the city, in the city. Living in the city.
Yeah, pretty happy with that. All right, moving on. Now, this organ's hard one. It sounds really good actually, on just as it is. I really quite like that. Let's have a look at the EQs anyway. There is an organ one in here. Keys, organ. I'll leave that one up to you, whether you want to put that preset on or not. Our electric guitars. Now that does sound a bit flat and boring. I really feel there is something we can do for this track here. I'll bring our EQ up. There are presets for guitar. 3 of them here. So let's just play that. Yeah, these two certainly sound better. play around. See the other one? That one's pretty clear anyway. I feel like guitar 1 is a bit louder than guitar 2. Let's just bring their levels down to... This should sit a bit more in the background, these two. They're just supporting instruments. That one's got a lot more treble in it. I quite like how they sound split fully left and right.
City, well it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Oh, it's city, well it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city, we're just living in the city. Oh, living in the...
Alright, now I'm hearing that the female vocalist is sounding a bit warm. So I want to sharpen that sound up and make it a bit more crisp again. So I'm just going to listen to that.
City, well it's hard in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard in the city. We're just living in the city.
Alright, so there's a bit of a lesson on EQing for you. Good luck with putting preset EQs on all your tracks, and hopefully you can make your song sound a bit clearer and a bit nicer. Enjoy.